Hello friends and welcome to Parks Crafty Creations. I'm your host Brian Parks, and today we're getting back to the basics with perfectly finished binding. No special tools required. Before we begin, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give us a like below, as it really does help out the channel. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell icon so you'll always be notified whenever a new video drops. Today, we're diving into a crucial sewing technique that every sewist needs to master: ending binding so that it lays perfectly without being too long or too short. Binding is a fantastic way to add a clean, professional finish to your sewing projects, whether it's a quilt, a garment, or a home decor item. But if you've ever struggled with getting the ends of your binding to join seamlessly, you're not alone. But the best part is that this technique doesn't require any special tools. Let's take a look. Alright, let's get started. There's actually a very simple trick to ending your binding so that it matches perfectly, so that you don't end up having pinches or having it fall short on you. And it all has to do with the width of your binding. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the width of our binding, in this case it's 2¼ inches, and we're going to overlap our two ends by that amount. So I'll take my ruler, I'll put that down on the end of my first piece of binding, and then I'll take my other end and I'll lay that over it. And then I'm just going to take my chalk and we'll mark it at that 2¼ inch. Now remember, I'm doing this because my binding is 2¼ inches. If it was 3 inches wide, I'd go 3 inches. If it was 4 inches wide, I'd go 4 inches, so on and so forth. The key is to go whatever the width of your binding is. So now that I've got my mark, I'm going to take my scissors, I'm just going to cut right at that mark. And now I've got it overlapping perfectly at 2¼ inches. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two pieces, I'm going to put them together at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to pin it. And of course, this is the tricky one, because both sides are now sewn down. So this can be a little tricky and a little frustrating if you've never done this before. But I promise it gets easier with a little bit of practice. There we go. All right. Now, if this was sewn together, these two will lay completely flat. And I'll actually show you how that looks as soon as I get this sewn up. So now I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and we'll stitch down diagonally. Alright, and as you can see, I'm back from the sewing machine and I stitched the two pieces back together just like I would do on any other part of the binding to join the ends. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bit of extra, I'm going to snip that to trim it back. And I'll take my iron, and I'm just going to iron that open, and when we fold it flat, it's going to lay perfectly. So now I can just take it back to my sewing machine and stitch along the edge at a 1/4 inch, and when you bring it over, it'll be a perfectly ended binding. Alright, and there we are. As you can see, I took it back to the sewing machine and laid down that one final line of stitches. So now I'm ready to just take this, fold it over, and hand stitch it along the back, and that'll finish up our binding. And as you can see, it ended up matching perfectly. And that's all there is to it. The secret is in the width of your binding. And that's all there is to it. Just remember to overlap your ends the same length as your binding is wide, and as long as your cut is accurate, you'll have a perfect finish every time. If you found this tutorial helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe for more sewing tips and tricks. Thanks for watching. I'm Brian Parks for Parks Crafty Creations. We'll see you next time.